July 1st, 1187, two massive armies gathered under the scorching heat of the Galilean hills. On one side was the ambitious victor of the Muslim world, Saladin, and on the other side was the newly crowned king of Jerusalem, Guy de Lusignan. But before diving deep into the Battle of Hattin, let's take a look at the political landscape of Jerusalem before the confrontation. In 1185, the reigning crowned king of Jerusalem, Baldwin IV, died as leprosy took the better of him at age 24. After Baldwin's death, his nephew Baldwin V became the king of Jerusalem at the age of 8. But his reign didn't last long, as he died just 1 year later after claiming kingship in 1186. The death of two heirs of the throne brought total chaos in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Despite being hardly opposed by Raymond III of Tripoli and other nobles, including Balian of Ibelin, the crown was placed on Guy of Lusignan's head by his wife Sibylla as he became the new king of Jerusalem in 1186. This rivalry of Guy de Lusignan's court faction and Raymond III's noble faction fractured the Kingdom of Jerusalem at the worst possible time, as Saladin was uniting the Muslims from every corner of his dynasty to conquer Jerusalem. Now, before we get to the Battle of Hattin, we should know what ignited the flames for this legendary clash. In 1187, Reynald of Châtillon attacked and raided a Muslim caravan while the truce with Saladin was still in place. When Saladin got the news of this treacherous act of Reynald, he swore before his emirs, "If God ever gives him to me, I will kill him with my own hands." On July 1st, 1187, Saladin arrived near Tiberias with an army of about 20 to 30,000 soldiers, composed of his elite Mamluk guards, slave soldiers trained since youth, Turkic and Kurdish mercenary horse archers, and volunteers eager for religious war. The whole army was organized into 3 divisions, with Saladin commanding the center. The Franks had around 15 to 18,000 infantry, 500 Turcopoles, and around 1,300 mounted knights. Almost every able-bodied Frank from the Crusader states had been called up, and additional mercenaries bought using the annual subsidy King Henry II of England sent for the defense of the Holy Land. The Franks literally had to strip off their garrisons in order to assemble this huge army under the cross. Although large, it was not as numerous as Saladin's. Saladin assembled his forces near Lake Tiberias, expecting the Crusaders camped at Sapphira to charge at him. When they did not move, Saladin himself led a lighter detachment and struck directly at Tiberias that same day. He knew how important the strategic location of this town was to the Crusaders in monitoring enemy movement. The town fell within an hour, though the citadel continued to hold out. According to some chroniclers, Raymond III's wife, Esquiva, was also trapped in the citadel. In spite of that, Raymond argued that Guy should not engage Saladin in battle, especially under his own terms, while Gerard of Riedfort and Reynald of Châtillon advised Guy to advance against Saladin. Guy took Gerard and Reynald's advice and ordered his army to march forward towards Tiberias on July 2nd, 1187. Even though the Crusader king knew that his men would bake in their suffocating suits of heavy chainmail, he deliberately led them into a place wholly unsuited to European battle tactics and miles from the nearest source of plentiful fresh water, the Sea of Galilee. In his haste to engage the Muslims, Guy selected a line of march that took him and his army directly across the blistering sand and gravel of Lubia, conditions that favored Saladin's light cavalry, each armed with 400 arrows. Saladin, warned by his scouts of Guy's march, left some men to watch the citadel of Tiberias and returned to his main army. Saladin set out hoping to intercept the advancing army at a point that suited him and favored Muslim tactics, and he found just the right place for a fight, a few miles south of Tiberias, on the lonely, desolate plain of Lubia. A bone-dry area where Saladin's withered opponents would have no water to slake their thirst as they moved forward. A place which offered a bleak setting for the coming battle, as its featureless vistas were broken only by the village of Hattin and a low set of hills known as the Horns. On the 3rd of July, 1187, Saladin attacked the Frankish army on its march towards Tiberias. Saladin's primary strategy was to have his mounted archers continuously harass the enemy and then quickly retreat as the Franks traveled through the waterless hills of Galilee. The 12th century historian Imad ad-Din al-Isfahani recorded, "The arrows plunged into them, transforming their lions into hedgehogs." Pestered by archers and worn down by the sun, Guy responded by reluctantly calling a halt to the march and ordering his men to set up camp. Exhausted, both Muslims and Crusaders spent the night armed, too weary to stand yet unable to rest, each side expecting an attack at any moment. Sensing the upcoming massacre of his coreligionists, Raymond III escaped with a handful of knights towards Tyre. As the magnificent July sun peeked over the horizon that following morning, Guy knew this would be a very long day for him and his men. The king renewed the march, hoping to beat the sun in his race to find water and engage his Muslim foes. Saladin's cavalry screen detected the Frankish movement as Guy's army rolled slowly forward, and the flank attacks began. Horse archers darted in and out of range, showering arrows on the Franks in assaults that increased in both frequency and ferocity as the day wore on. One strategy the Muslim army had used to great effect was to attack the horses of the Western knights, whose armor made them almost invulnerable, thus reducing their mobility and leading to their capture. As the 13th century Arab historian Abu Shama states, "A Frankish knight, as long as his horse was in good condition, could not be knocked down." Saladin, sensing an opportunity to innovate, ordered the scrub brush along Guy's axis of advance set ablaze. The resulting fires simultaneously elevated the ambient temperature that nature had already driven to unbearable heights, while producing a thick cloud of acrid smoke that obscured the Franks' vision and stung their eyes. It was a complete catastrophe for the Crusaders, as the heat and smoke made it impossible to breathe. Arrows pierced them from every direction while they suffered from unbearable thirst. In stark terror, the men bunched up and suddenly panicked. Their ranks broke, and soldiers began to scatter in all directions, and each one ran for his life. Saladin chose this instant to strike, as his lancers and archers pounced down on the hapless Franks. Some men screamed as lances pierced their chainmail, others writhed on the ground like human pincushion shot through with arrow shafts. Though the odds and the ground stood against them, some tenacious knights fought valiantly. In the end, Saladin became victorious as the exhausted, broken Crusaders surrendered on the 4th July, 1187, near the Horns of Hattin. As soon as the dust had settled, Saladin ordered 230 of the Western knights to be beheaded. Saladin ordered the rest of the survivors rounded up. The victors placed collars around their necks and chains on their wrists, and led them away to be sold as slaves in the markets of Damascus. According to chroniclers, so many captives flooded into Saladin's capital that the price of slaves plummeted. Guy de Lusignan was captured but treated hospitably and later released, while Reynald of Châtillon, who had earlier attacked a Muslim caravan in contravention of a truce, got his comeuppance and was mercilessly butchered, the first blow coming from Saladin's own scimitar. Gerard of Rochefort, the master of the Templars and the main cause of defeat at the Battle of Cresson, was also spared. Saladin knew very well what pieces on the board were not worth the capture. Besides winning a famous victory, Saladin also secured the added bonus of capturing the holy relic, the True Cross, from Guy's royal tent after the battle. The loss of such a precious spiritual talisman was a mortal blow to the Franks and Western Europe in general. Saladin celebrated the success at Hattin by erecting a domed building at the site, the foundations of which are still visible today.